Hi, Pete.
Hey Taylor,
Hi,
nice to
Ryan.
see you again.
Hi
Oh, I'm
guys.
sorry. The Honorable Judge Brian Peterson. How you guys doing?
Really good. Really good. Excited to be here.
Thanks, man. And we're
Yeah.
excited to have you. Pete, who is this man and how do we know him?
Oh, this is a great guy. His name is. Oh, hold on. I'm gonna read this right.
You have to look it up.
I
Who
know
is
his name.
fucking
I just want to read it officially.
This
Okay.
is
The
John.
honor, the Honorable Judge Ryan D. Peterson, and I knew him from when I was like a sophomore in high school, and I lived in Germany with my family, and he was there, as a missionary. And then so I knew him. Man, when was that? That was like 30
30
years
years
ago
ago.
or something. Yeah, something like that.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I've been, I follow people that are doing better than me to make myself, yeah, to say that I know people. Yeah. Like when the last time I got in a heated argument, I was like, do you even know who Ryan Peterson is? And they'd give me that look and I'd be like, see? Anyway, so this is why I still follow up with Ryan Peterson so that I can have people like him on my
I would
Rolodex.
just want to point out how hilarious it is to me that we spent a solid 5 minutes. How do you want to be introduced, Ryan? Please just call me Ryan. Don't make a big deal out of the Honorable Judge. And like all we've done for the last 90 seconds is like, you're a judge, you're smart, smart guy, judge, honorable.
Yep. Well, get this. I'm going to read his official biography, and you're
Oh,
going to
and
be
let's
even
see.
more impressed, Taylor. So
I
hold on
love
to your
how
butts.
uncomfortable he looks. I'm
Okay.
holding on to my butt.
Ryan D. Peterson was appointed to the 4th District Juvenile Court bench December 2024 by Governor Spencer Cox. He earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Utah in 2003, graduated from the University of Tulsa College of Law in 2007. In law school, Judge Peterson worked with the Bosch Legal Clinic, hopefully I pronounced that right, and was sworn in as an attorney in the Muskogee Creek Indian Nation Court. In
Wow.
2007, he became an associate at Ivy and Young, and in 2010 worked at the firm of Blakelock and Petersen. In 2014, Judge Peterson began working with MacArthur, Heater, and Mettler, where he became a senior partner prior to taking the bench. And that was a year ago, 1 year ago.
It
There you go.
was.
So, how was your first year as a judge?
I have loved every minute of it. It is good work. It is challenging. It's impactful, but it's meaningful. And I have loved it. It was such a humbling experience to go through to get to this point, and then even more so now. Like I say, sometimes I sit up there and just wonder, why are you wanting me to make this decision? Like, what's qualified me to be sitting up here? But I love it. It's good work. I have a great group of attorneys who appear in front of me. The bench here is phenomenal. So I'm really, really lucky.
Who's your favorite attorney?
Yeah, I'm not gonna say that. I'll get in big trouble there.
I can't tell you that it's John. Come
It's
on
only
now.
the internet.
My father is a lawyer. He got his JD from BYU. He got a JD MBA, and then my uncle John is he's part of the DA's office, I believe, in Utah. John McCary. I don't know if you've ever met him or heard of him, but
I
He's kind of a big deal.
I'm sure he is. I didn't do a lot of criminal defense, and those guys, we don't run in the same circles. But
hmm.
yeah, I could probably look him up real quick and see where he's at. And yeah.
Nah.
And charge him with something.
Yeah, that's why I kept on saying John. John is your favorite because I happen to know a lawyer named
There
John
you
out
go.
of
Okay.
Utah.
See, I could start listing all the attorneys in my old firm because they can't appear in front of me. So
Oh, there you go. They're your favorites. I do have a genuine question, and that is, how did you go from being a non-judge to a judge?
so the quick version is that they post an announcement saying there's a position open. Mine was because a judge here retired, and so they posted that position. In Utah, I love the process here in Utah because it's not elected. I don't have to go out and put signs up in
Hmm.
people's yards or anything. There is a local committee that's appointed by the governor to 4-year terms, and they review all of the initial applications. It's a pretty extensive application. You have to get, I think it's 10 attorneys to fill out kind of a reference for you, and then up to 6 or 8 judges as well. And then that local committee reviews those, and then they decide who they want to interview. They do an interview of those people, and then they're required to send 5 names to the governor, who then all 5 of us interviewed with his staff of 3, and then they recommended to the governor, like, hey, talk to these people. When I got it, it was me and one other person interviewing the governor's office. It was super intense, a little surreal, but and then he picks one of those names as his appointed pick. You go from there then to the Senate for confirmation. And so I had to go and sit in front of a committee of 7. It's the Judicial Nomination Committee, and they really,
just out of curiosity, was that state Senate or
yeah, state Senate. So it was up at the Capitol complex up in Salt Lake City. You go through that, and then they do a vote to recommend or not recommend to the full Senate. I was fortunate enough to get the unanimous recommendation, and then you go in front of the full Senate there at the Capitol building while they're in session, and your name is presented, and they talk a little bit about you, and then your name is called for a vote, and they call every senator's name, and you hear yay or nay, and once you have a majority of the senators, then you're confirmed, and then you can start. So it was a cool, intense process.
When the governor selects you, is it pretty much like, is the Senate going to confirm you, or is it still up in the air and you're biting your nails every time you hear a yay or nay?
I wasn't, but it's an interesting process too, because the focus here is more on district court judges. I don't know that they know exactly the role of the juvenile court up there, because most of them, frankly, have never had to deal with, a child welfare or a delinquency issue. And the matters we decide don't really end up in the news. They're not those big hot button type issues. So once I got past the initial committee hearing, I felt good, but there's still always a chance. And so I was still kind of, it's a little intense sitting there, with your family in the Senate chamber, and I'm counting the votes. I'm like, all right, I need 17. Like, there's 1, there's 2, okay, all right, we're good. Now it doesn't matter.
When did you get any, I don't know if you can even say this, did you get any nays?
I did not. No, I was really lucky that way. So.
Okay. The topic today is forgiveness, and I thought, what a great segue that would be to, if you've forgiven the people who tried to keep you from getting
that guy. Yeah.
No, I was very fortunate. Like I say, it was a very humbling process. They put your name out for public comment. People can submit comments to the Senate. They talk to you about some of those comments, and so yeah, it was an interesting process.
Wow. Did you decide to go into the juvenile system, or is that where they placed you?
I specifically applied for a juvenile court spot. I had part of my practice, like I say, I did family law, and then on top of that, I also, for about 14 years prior to taking the bench, I practiced in juvenile court as well, and so it was a specific juvenile court position, and so that's what I applied for.
Wow. I mean, I think Pete and I are probably uniquely qualified to comment on what it is to work with children in this kind of capacity. But like, when I say my hat is off to you, it is a hard, hard job to do juvenile court work. So goodness gracious.
Yeah. With therapy, a lot of it is wanting to fix the parents, because you're seeing kids get emotionally hurt in a legal context. That would be even more frustrating, because you can't approach like, you need to sit down and have an emotional conversation with your kids. As a therapist, you say that. I don't know what the extent is as a judge, but man, the legal constraints have got to be more frustrating.
There's a lot of referrals to therapy. So if your kids are removed from your custody and placed in foster care, Or even if they're not, but the state comes in and it says, hey, this family needs some help, and if we don't step in now, even though the kids are staying in the home, we need to provide some help, or else they're going to end up being removed. They develop what's called child and family plan, and almost in every case, therapy is part of that plan, like going and family therapy, parenting classes, individual therapy, a lot of domestic violence, substance abuse stuff. So it plays such an important role in what I do with the therapy, and a lot of times too, the requirements are that the kids go. The kids have absolutely seen trauma, seen things that they shouldn't have to deal with, and so a lot of times it's the state will pay for, in those situations, pay for therapy for the kids, because it's so needed.
I'm sure Taylor has, and I've been involved in court-ordered therapy quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a different kind of therapy, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
I'm curious, when you're done with your day of work, do you have a hard time shaking it off?
I am fortunate. I have about a 20-minute drive home, and so a lot of times it's a podcast, it's music, it's something on the way home, so I can, I have that kind of physical time to just be like, okay, I'm going to take what I did today and just leave it at the gate as I drive out at the courthouse parking lot there, and I can pick it up when I come back. But I have a long enough drive home that it gives me some time to kind of shed that.
That's good. Is it normally an easy shed? Like, I know people ask me how I shake it off, and like for whatever reason, it just doesn't stick to me.
Yeah.
Very rarely does it stick, but
I have found that this job, it is a lot easier than when I was a practicing attorney, because I can leave it at this point. When I was practicing, it was, I had my phone. People were calling me at all hours, emails constantly, texts constantly. So it's a lot easier now to do that than before. We were at a family party, or not a family party, but a Christmas party the other night, and somebody asked my wife, they're like, so are you liking your husband's new job? And she said, and December is a really hard time for families and family law attorneys and all of that. And she said, yeah, I have really, really liked this. This is the first time in 20 years he hasn't been a complete monster in December.
What? Oh, thanks, honey.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm like, harsh.
maybe she meant more like Grover or Elmo.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Exactly.
Yeah, Cookie Monster.
Cookie Monster.
Exactly. I just can't eat. Me love cookies. Emotional eating make me happy.
We'll go with that. That's what your wife meant.
There you go.
Go ahead, Pete.
Well, in terms of our theme here of forgiveness, I wanted to bring in your experiences, because I am sure that you have seen both sides when things go badly and people get hurt. The fallout from when people are forgiven and when people are not forgiven. I'm talking about the fallout not from the victims, or not from the perpetrators, like if the victim forgives them, but the consequences of forgiveness for the victims who forgive. If you've been able to see that
Before we even do that, can we define what forgiveness means?
Yeah.
Because I think people think forgiveness is a different thing per person. So
Okay.
for you, Ryan, what is forgiveness for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, because it's hard to, some people may say they forgive, but they'll never trust somebody again. Like, look, okay, I recognize that this thing happened. It's not my fault. This thing happened to me. It's not my fault. And I can still be in a room and I can be cordial with you. And, or a lot of times I'm seeing it in family situations, and they've gotten to a place where it's okay. I can be in a room with you. I can not scream and yell at you, but I'll never trust you again. That's kind of one end. And then there's others where it's, they are fully reunified as a family. They're, they just kind of go forward, and it was, well, this is a thing that happened, but, we're past it, and they forget and they move past it. So it's a hard thing, and everybody carries it differently. When I saw it in practice, when I was representing parents, a lot of DV victims. I had a lot of victims of DV that I would represent, and just seeing kind of that process going from, having pretty horrific abuse happen to them, physical, and then we saw the physical, the pictures, the black eyes, the broken noses. I can distinctly think of a couple of clients where, talking to them and you could physically see, their nose is broken and off kilter. And just kind of how they approach people and deal with people, and the ones who have to deal with that. It's interesting because when they get to a point where they can recognize, look, this isn't my fault. This is something that happened to me that I didn't deserve. I didn't cause it. But I have to deal with the fallout. I'm the one that has to do the work. I'm the one that has to, figure out how to reconcile what happened to me, and how does that affect me moving forward, and how can I, not necessarily put it behind me, but how can I get to a place where it doesn't define who I am. Has been a really interesting process to see. It was interesting to see representing those people, and it's been interesting to see kind of from this new perspective of how do I help create a situation that both sides are feeling like they're heard and they're understood as to, whatever reasons, and then how do we help them move forward in a way that's safe for themselves and for others.
I was going to ask if you believe that forgiveness is truly possible. And by forgiveness, I guess I mean where you really can move past it. Because as you were describing it, there are a lot of like, I can accept that it happened. I can accept the responsibility for my part of the work to be done after the event has happened, while eschewing responsibility for the event itself. At what point do you think a person is able to say, I have forgiven them? And does that mean that they're free of,
Well,
is
true forgiveness is hard to define. Sorry to interject here, Ryan, but I mean, when we say when we asked you what your definition of forgiveness is, you mentioned that there are different flavors of it. Even when I'm looking in academia, I'm looking for some kind of study that uses a generalized term of forgiveness, and it's really hard to come by. But one thing that is predominant in a definition of forgiveness is you don't ignore the transgression, you acknowledge that it happened, and at a minimum, an absence of ill will. So you mentioned having a lack of trust with still no animosity. So you can,
Yeah, and I think that's I think that's the key is, whatever's happened to the victim is going to change them. By the very nature of that trauma, they're going to be changed. But it's that ill will. Are they all consumed by, those feelings of
it's deliberate and it's volitional as well. Deliberate, volitional. You don't ignore it, and there's no ill will. And that's interesting. If they talking about the worst type of trauma here, if they pretended it didn't happen, which unfortunately I have also seen, which is it's not so bad. He says, it won't happen again. He's really sorry. Like he's really, really sorry. And it didn't happen. And you're like, your nose is 30 degrees off like off mission. And you
yeah.
are telling me that it's okay. It's not really that bad. And that sounds like they're not acknowledging the transgression
right.
so they can't truly forgive. So with this definition, I mean, that's kind of what I work on. It's volitional, and like it's your choice. You did it because you wanted to do it. It was deliberate. You acknowledged there was an offense, and you don't have any ill will towards them.
I don't know if that's possible, right? I mean, like, and here's my caveat, right? Like, I have a really hard time not holding grudges. I think I forgive people, but I have a really hard time not remembering what happened and then having that really shape the thing. I think that true forgiveness is possible, but I don't know if it's possible not to have some kind of ill will? And if there is, then I need to correct
Well, I mean,
myself here.
ill will towards the event that happened, or like you now dislike that person. Ill will towards. Do you have unconditional positive regard? That kind of thing.
Ugh, unconditional positive regard. Ugh, I don't like that phrase in the best of circumstances. I would say that when I tell my clients they need to work on forgiveness, I think therapy, as an example, is always and first and foremost a question of forgiveness. And who and what you're forgiving is different from person to person. But generally speaking, it's, do I forgive myself for doing this to myself? Do I forgive this person for doing this to me? Do I forgive the world for having this happen and me having to pay the price for it? I always say that you've forgiven someone when you don't need justice anymore. You don't need them to be, it doesn't need to be made right. It's been accepted, it's been integrated, and you can move past it as a fully integrated thing. But I don't know if that means I don't
But
know.
then when you reflect on it, you still are bitter and resentful.
I mean, like, I think about
Taylor
things
for a
that
minute.
make me, yeah, let's just make me look like a big old dummy face here. I think that there are things that, I mean, like Pete knows that when I think about like people who have hurt me, people I care about who have hurt me, I can access that anger. I wouldn't say easily, but I know where to find it. I have it neatly packaged in a small little space, but I know if I poke at it, it'll come back to life. Does that mean that the possibility of resurgent anger negates any possibility of forgiveness? I don't think so, because I don't need them to correct the thing that happened, but I can still be mad that it happened in the first place.
Well, and it's interesting too. I mean, I think part of the reason why, family law and juvenile court, those types of things are, a lot of attorneys hate that. They hate that area of the law. You hear a lot of attorneys and they're like, "Yeah, I did family law for, long enough to do my first divorce and realized that I didn't want anything to do with that ever again." Because it's people who are close to each other who have hurt each other. I mean, I always said that, people asked me how I could do family law, how I could do divorce work. And it was always, look, absent, because I've read a bunch on this, and absent the death of a spouse you're in love with, or the death of a child, or, somebody really close to you, divorce is one of the most emotionally traumatic things you can go through. And the problem with divorce too is, with a death, it's kind of like, okay, here's one event, and that really sucks. With family law and divorce and breaking up relationships, you're always picking at the scab. Every time you have to have an interaction with that person because of kids or because of property or whatever, you're just ripping that scab off. And the closer they are together, the more hurt because of the breakup you usually see.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I think about it all the time. I get told by parties, I get told by attorneys all the time, "Judge, you got that wrong. You don't know what you're talking about there." And for some reason, because I don't have to live with them, I don't have to go home with them, it's like, okay, well, I made the call, and there's a process, and if somebody else above me, if the Court of Appeals above me tells me I'm wrong, great, I'm wrong. But you telling me I'm wrong, I don't care. I made a call. I'm required to make a call. I made a call, and you telling me I'm wrong isn't going to change that, because I have that distance there. But, I go home and I get told by my wife, that I folded the towels wrong or something. It's like, oh, I'm a terrible husband. What's going on here?
So have you seen true forgiveness then? You say this is one up there, top tier, emotionally traumatic things between two very vulnerable people who are trying to callous over as quickly as they can, and yet they're so vulnerable still.
So I'll share a story that another judge here in the building told us today. We had our bench meeting today, and she talked about an experience in her courtroom where one of the things that we do is called an expungement. So if a crime is committed, after a certain amount of time, if you've done everything you're supposed to, you can come to the court and say, "Okay, Judge, I've done everything I'm supposed to. I want this completely taken off the records so that it never shows up again, so it doesn't show up on a background check. I paid my debt, and I don't want any record of this anymore. I want this sealed." And she had a situation where, an offense was committed by a kid. And, he came back for an expungement, and the opportunity exists
Like as
for
an adult, he came back after serving
yeah.
time. Okay.
Yep, and the opportunity exists for the victims to come in and say, Judge, I object. I don't want this expungement
Oh, that sounds
to go through.
brutal.
Oh man, yeah.
And that's what happened in this one. And so the judge set a hearing for that, and the victim came in with witnesses, and the perpetrator came in with witnesses saying, "Look, here's all the things I've done to change my life." And the interesting part of the thing about it too was it was cousins that were on both sides, and there was this real rift in the family. And the kid came in, and well, let's say kid, but the adult came in. He said, "Look, here's all the things I've done, and I'm rehabilitated. I've done what I'm supposed to, and this record now is holding me back from what I want to do in my career. I'm about to lose my job as a nurse, or get kicked out of nursing school because of this."
Wow.
And she got up and she's like, "Look, he has never once acknowledged that he hurt me." And she laid out kind of everything, that the reasons that she was objecting to the expungement. And as they did that, he really, what I was told was he just kind of like looked really shocked and was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know how to approach you. I didn't think I was allowed to approach you. I didn't realize how much hurt and pain I've really caused you. And part of that was increased because you've never heard, this isn't your fault. You've never heard from me that I was the one who was responsible. You just got radio silence from me." And so as they went through that, the judge, they got done, and the judge said, "You know what, ma'am, I believe you. I want you to know nothing that you have done, deserved what happened to you. You didn't cause any of this. This is not your fault whatsoever." And frankly, I realized that he had kind of a blind spot for you. He's not recognizing fully some of your pain. And so, I'm inclined. I don't see you as a person who is holding on to a grudge just to punish him forever. So I'm kind of inclined to not grant the expungement right now, unless you're willing to withdraw the objection.
Oh
And
wow,
she
left a
said,
door open there at the very end of like.
and she said the victim looked at her, she smiled, and she said, "I've heard what I needed to hear today. I'm willing to withdraw the objection."
Wow.
Whoa.
And
Oh,
so,
my
I mean,
goodness.
like
What a
that right
moment.
there, I mean, and talking to this judge, she's like, because I asked her how it went, because she was talking to me before. She's like, "Yeah, I've got this weird hearing. I've never done one of these, and I asked her afterwards, I'm like, "So how'd it go?" And she said, "It was the strangest, most beautiful hearing I've ever been in." And she's been on the bench for, 19 years.
Wow. Wow. I think you're touching on a really important thing that I think that you can still access anger, but I want to make it really clear. I think forgiveness truly is possible. And I think what you're describing is what forgiveness gives a person, that moment of letting go of like, I don't need this to be fixed because it's just the truth. And I can live with the truth.
Now it's
Yeah.
just the
That's a
truth.
beautiful thing.
And another point that you made, and maybe is addressed by the fact that you're in the legal system, forgiveness is not an entitlement. Forgiveness is not required. Forgiveness is always, I think, a gift. It's always
Yeah.
deliberate by somebody who gives it. It's
Mhm.
never an accident.
And I think it's a gift that you give other people. And I think equally important, it's a gift that you give yourself. If you can forgive somebody, even if they haven't apologized, the ability to put that thing, I mean, it's a cure for cancer, like I've seen people who cannot let go of hurts. For example, I have a client who cheated on his wife years ago. He's one of the most impressive men I've ever met in my life. He's done everything he can to make it right. He's apologized. He's gone to counseling. He does everything right, and his wife, his ex-wife at this point, cannot forgive him. And at this point, I kind of look at him and I go, I think she's hurting herself way more than she's hurting you. Don't get me wrong, like you're getting the paper cuts, but she's like stabbing herself to get the paper out of her. I mean, like it's ridiculous. The
So
things
there's
people will
a
do to hang
balance
on to
then,
pain.
a balance between you doing what you can to seek forgiveness without and without expecting it. It's the weird thing. Like, I really want you to forgive me, and I'm going to try everything I can to rehabilitate myself without assuming that you're going to get it.
Well, a lot of times with my clients, again, when I was practicing, who were struggling with substance abuse issues, we would not see progress towards sobriety until they were able to kind of face that shame of their addiction head on. And once they could do that, then they started seeing traction, and things got better. But if they couldn't do that, and it was always just beating themselves up and not giving themselves grace when they weren't perfect, those types of things, they stayed stuck and they weren't successful. But the ones who could face it and talk about it and address it head on, really were the ones who saw progress, or the ones that we saw who were able to kind of put things right for themselves, start to try and put things right for others, and then recognizing that some things that they have done to others, it's not an easy linear process for them to just say, well, okay, you're good, we're back to normal. I mean, some of those relationships will be permanently gone because of their actions, but as long as they've done everything they can to address it, they see progress in themselves.
You're bringing up a really, I think, important point here that just really hit me with as we've been talking about this, and that's I don't think forgiveness can exist in the shadowy place. Like, you can't generate forgiveness unless it's in the open light, which is to say that it's really hard to forgive shameful secrets if they can't be acknowledged for what they are. It's really hard to forgive things that haven't been addressed and looked in the eye straight ahead. That woman, for example, in that story, I've never heard him express any regret or pain. He's like, "Oh my gosh, please let me give you all the regret and pain, and I mean it from the depths of my soul." For her to go, "Oh, it's in the light now, and now I can see it. Great, done." And it's huge. And I think for in our profession, and I'm sure in your profession, taking things out of the dark is the key component to finding the thing you're looking for almost all the time. It has to be looked at in bright and shiny lights.
A lot of times hiding it makes it worse. It festers. You just can't address it. There was a systematic review called a scoping study done in 2025, where they looked at 30 different studies, and they found some recurring themes, what they called decisional forgiveness and emotional forgiveness. And I think you've hit on this a little bit. Decisional forgiveness is a behavioral change to treat the offender as a valuable person and to forswear vengeance. And decisional forgiveness, again, deliberate and volitional. It just means I'm going to take away your consequences from, like, any consequence that I could give you. Emotional forgiveness is an emotional replacement of negative, unforgiving emotions like resentment and bitterness with positive, other-oriented emotions like sympathy and compassion. So I think we're talking about different flavors of forgiveness, and in the legal sense, it sounds a lot like those are blended. You can, as the judge, you're dealing with consequences, decisional forgiveness, and your hands are tied. Like, you can't just forgive people, or can you? I don't know.
Well, as I've been in the legal profession now for 18, 19 years at this point, the idea of a debt to society being paid, like, I think about that a lot, because a lot of times, people will serve their sentence. They'll do whatever the court has required them to do. but a lot of times as society, people still kind of hold on to that. They leave the system with this, scarlet letter, I'm a felon and I'm a felon forever. Or, in my realm, it's we have, and I had one this week. It's, the state coming in and asking for termination of parental rights. And if I find that a parent is unfit and that a termination is to occur, that tag of unfitness doesn't end as far as the Division of Child and Family Services goes with that child. If they were to have other children in the future, the state can come in and say, you've been found unfit once, we're going to take a closer look at you now. And I think a lot about those types of consequences. And I wonder sometimes, really, what does it mean to pay your debt to society? We hear that a lot in the legal context there. And is that debt ever fully paid? And if so, how? I don't have the answer to that.
That makes me wonder if you think, or how you view the interaction between justice and forgiveness, and if there whatever is possible outside of a religious context, can forgiveness ever truly erase justice?
Yeah, great question.
Again, part of the reason I think a lot of attorneys hate family law so much is there's a lot of case law out there that says in family law context, the court has what they call broad discretion. So, in certain cases, if this happens in other contexts, criminal cases, if you are found to be in possession of whatever illegal item the law has said you're not allowed to have possession of, then this is the result. And it's very narrow, like what happens. Sometimes you hear in the criminal context, mandatory sentences, those types of things. In family law, it's the court has broad discretion to do what's in the best interest of the children. And I always say lawyers make a whole lot of money on the terms reasonable, broad discretion, and best, because what one person thinks is in a child's best interest, you'll have a mom say, well, it's clearly in the best interest that my children are with their mom. And the dad on the other side, rightly so as well, can absolutely believe, well, it's in the best interest for their dad to be a part of their life and them with me. Who's right there? There's no good, easy, well, this is the case. And so in the law, I mean, a long answer to your fairly short question is there can be, I think, situations where orders or things are crafted to help facilitate forgiveness, but it's up to the parties to grab a hold of that. And, sorry, I'm hearing sirens.
Sounds like you got some work coming.
Yeah, fortunately, I don't do personal injury. But, it's up to the parties once that system is in place, whether or not they're going to actually utilize that, and then how it goes for them is completely up to them. And we lose the ability to have any influence over that. So that's hard.
In your broad discretion, are you given the opportunity for decisional forgiveness?
Yeah, I can say there's times where I can say, okay, look, this has happened, but here's what we've done and we've dealt with it, and now we're moving on, and I'm not going to bring that up again.
Oh, okay.
That's a possibility. A lot of what I do is trying to make a determination of, have the parents in child welfare situations, have they done enough to prove to me that their kids are going to be safe with them again? And so, yeah, I think it absolutely, comes into play, because that's what I do. I have to make that determination, which is, again, sometimes why I'm like, you want me to, I've never met, like I see you for, 20 minutes in a court hearing and I hear what your attorneys are telling me. But I'm not in your home. I'm not there, in your therapy sessions. I'm not there, to truly know what's in your heart, what's in, what your end goals are or your motivations. I can just go off of what I'm being told here, and so that's a hard part of the job for sure.
Sure. So when you give that decisional forgiveness, I'm sure you're encouraging emotional forgiveness, but does it ever come at the cost of justice?
That's a great question. I don't think so, because my job, part of the thing that really has been drilled home to me as well is I am required to follow the law. There are times where the decision I want to make and the decision I'm allowed to make are vastly different things.
Hmm.
Um, and so, because if I stop following the law, the system breaks down. If the law says, okay, Ryan, you have to do in this certain set of circumstances, this is what you're required to do. If I step outside of that, the whole system breaks apart, because then it's judge roulette. It's, oh, I hope I get that guy, and what, he's not following the proper, he's not following the law. He's not, and fortunately we have checks, we have, appeals and those types of things. But I have to always make sure that in whatever I do, I'm following the law. And if I do that, then justice is satisfied.
Hmm.
And sometimes you can satisfy both. But I can never allow my personal feelings to override what the law says I'm required to do. I get jokes all the time like, "Oh, you're a judge now, you can always be speeding, you don't have to follow the law." And frankly, I'm a better driver now because I'm more worried about like, oh crap, I'm gonna end up on the news, because I got caught going, 30 over the speed limit when I shouldn't have been.
So if justice cannot be overridden through forgiveness, and this is maybe a little off topic here, but I would love to hear how you define justice then. Because you're telling me, and I fully believe this, you're telling me that justice is the question you grapple with. What is the just thing to do here? When you're making that determination, it sounds like part of that justice is defined judicially, legally, but for you on a felt basis, how do you look at something and go, justice?
As long as they meet the requirements of the law. Like I'll be given certain factors. Like if I have a termination of parental rights case, and this is getting a little into the weeds, but before we get
We
to
like the
best
weeds.
Yeah.
yeah, I have to find first what's called grounds, and the law lists 10 different reasons that are justifiable grounds for termination: abandonment, neglect. There's a list, and then if I find grounds, then I move to, is it in the best interest of the child for termination from their point of view, and is termination what they call strictly necessary? And there's factors under best interest as well. And so if I go through and I say, okay, I find abandonment has occurred because this parent for the last 6 months has not had any contact with the child, has made no effort to provide for housing or care as a normal parent, whatever. Okay, that box is checked. There's an abandonment grounds. Then the next thing I go to is best interest, and I look at those factors. Neglect is defined as, and so I have to go through and say, and I have to outline in my decision, I've considered this factor, and here's what I've decided related to that factor. As long as I do that and do everything that the law has told me to do, I've met the requirements of justice there. And sometimes I can say, look, this is a close call, but I'm going one way or another. There's what we call burden of proof. You hear it all the time, proven by beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, that's the highest standard that we have in court. That proof by beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest standard. And those are reserved for criminal cases. In civil cases that I preside over, the highest standard is what we call clear and convincing evidence. And if you were to put a number on it, 80 to 85% proof. There's still some, wiggle room for some doubt, but that's the highest standard there. And then there's a standard called preponderance, which is more likely than not, 50.1% true, and that's the lowest standard there. For termination cases, it has to be proven by clear and convincing evidence. And so I have to weigh the evidence and say, 85%, it's more like, most likely there, and others, we're not quite there yet. And so as long as I follow what the law tells me I have to follow, I can weigh those individual things, keeping in mind where on the scale the state has to get before they've proven their case. And if they don't get there, then I can say, you're not there. And that's where my leeway comes in.
Your function right now is to pursue justice. Like, your job right now is just justice. Mm-hmm. And us as lay people, we're talking about forgiveness. It's an interesting discussion about legal forgiveness, but really I think what we're talking about is, are we willing to forswear vengeance as a definition,
or have the right to, because
or have a right justice. To. But you have very clear lines delineated. Like, I will give you these consequences based on these checkboxes are checked, and therefore I'm convinced. Therefore, here are the rote consequences. But here in the milieu of this messy blender of life, of like, we don't have rules. We don't have a way to decide whether Johnny throwing that rock at me was actually at me, and should I hate him forever because he sucks. And no, not that John Taylor. I'm not talking about your relative. But,
I'm calling him right now.
Yeah, crap. But I mean, in terms of justice, you have your job gives you this great support of like how to determine what is just, so you can sleep at night because someone else wrote the book on what is just.
But
and how do we forgive that as a human being when we don't have a rule book?
But how great of a thing is it, though, that we here in this country have an institution, and this is me clearly biased, okay?
Why would you be biased this direction? That's weird.
But how great is it that we have an institution like the court where we can hand off that kind of responsibility for seeking justice for ourselves? I mean, if we didn't have a place where we could go and ask, like, look, I've got a beef with Johnny, whatever.
Leave my uncle alone.
Yes, keep Johnny going. Forget Johnny.
Fine. I've got a beef with whoever. That guy in traffic doesn't know how to drive. He cut me off. It's not my responsibility to chase that guy down and hold him accountable for that. That's the job of the court. Because if we didn't have that place where we could take those grievances or those problems, those issues in society, where we've established kind of a baseline, like, look, okay, here's the rules. Here's the rules of society. But it's not up to us individually to enforce those rules. That's what we have.
That's by the common contract, right? Like,
that's what we have the court for.
Yeah.
And I love that part of my job. It's not that me, Ryan Petersen, is inherently just and wise, and it's I have been placed in this position. The position is bigger than me as a person. But we as society have said, okay, we have given judges this responsibility. They're the ones who will make this decision for us. And so it's not chaos out there. It's not, like I say, it's not a situation where everybody feels like any little slight, they have to go out and be the vigilante and take care of it. We can hand that off. Going
back to that story you shared earlier, it sounded like that lady, given a third party or given a situation for the opportunity to forgive, it was like, you have these consequences, and I'm leaning towards not expunging this record. And then that lady was given the environment to where it was outside of her. Like, I can hear all these things and I will decide whether I forgive, but the consequences are outside of me. Yeah, when you're talking about having a system where you don't have to track everyone down and enforce the rules of society, that means that we are left to ourselves. Society as a structure is meant to take care of consequences. So now we're just left with the emotional forgiveness. The decisional forgiveness is your job, Honorable Ryan Petersen, and I am left with the emotional forgiveness.
Well, apologies, by the way, for not throwing a more honorable, and we'll fix that, Your Honor. I'm sorry. I am more and more convinced as this conversation goes on, something that is surprising me, which is I don't think anymore that justice and forgiveness are separated. I think they are a coin, and they're separate sides of the coin, but they are essentially addressing and paying the same thing, which I don't know why I've never thought of that before, or I've thought of them as inextricably connected. But hearing you talk about this, the more I'm like, oh my goodness, justice and forgiveness are the same thing on different ends of this. They're just different ends of the same stick, which is crazy to me.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And yeah, it's an interesting balance. It's one of the things that, I mean, obviously I'm required to follow the law. I'm required to do those things, but I can create situations that make the emotional forgiveness easier or harder depending on what I impose. And that's in my discretion that I can do that. And sometimes there's safety issues. Sometimes there's, like, look, you two are not allowed to have any contact with each other because it's not safe. It's not safe for either one or both parties or your children. Like, I can do that. I have the authority to make those orders. But there's other situations where if we issue orders that create a safe environment that allows them to forgive and then move on, it's we've done some pretty good things, and that's part of what I love about the juvenile court. The juvenile court's a problem solving court. We've been presented with some pretty specific problems, and our goal is to reunification or safety, whatever. Like, it's created to strengthen families. That's what the code says. Is
you're saying like criminal court is like consequences and adult, like punishment and stuff like that. And this one
adult district court is very, you did this, here's the consequences. I worked in the district court for a while and for a judge before I went to law school, and I used to hear him say all the time when parties would work out an agreement amongst themselves, he would always say, thank you for working this out. I always find agreements reached between the parties are, they last longer. They're easier because both of you felt like you had a say in the outcome. And frankly, if you had come in and argue, that's fine. I'm happy to do my job. But these two attorneys are really good at their job. And in 15 minutes of advocating for your position will create a situation where you will never be allowed or able to be in the same room ever again. And the ones who really pay for it is when your child gets married and they have to decide, am I inviting mom or am I inviting dad to the wedding? Or when they have children, who do we invite to the hospital? Do we invite mom or do we invite dad? Because both of them together can't be in the same room. So it's a really interesting thing to look at, and it's a responsibility that I feel a lot. Like, am I making this situation better or worse by this decision that I'm making?
And it sounds like the consequences do, as Taylor said, pick at the scab. You know where the anger is, even though you don't access it all the time, and there's a constant reminder of where that pain is, that box in your brain, and it'd be hard to keep revisiting that. So I don't know if I think Taylor's right. Maybe some listener out there.
Say that again, Pete. Say that again.
Maybe Taylor's right here. I have to. Gosh,
I wasn't sure I heard that right. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I want a listener to weigh in here too. If true forgiveness is possible, and we're talking about forgiveness where you've completely supplanted ill will. You say, "Am I going to invite my dad or my mom to my birth?" That is a huge and painful
not
choice.
To your birth. They were probably there for that.
Yeah, okay, not my birth. Wow, what am I talking about? Who do I work with? Okay, so if you're making those difficult choices, that means that you're feeling pain or not constantly, but you're accessing pain at these
It can be
consequences.
accessed constantly. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So does forgiveness mean happiness? Does forgiveness mean um,
Ooh.
does forgiveness might mean a little more peace, but it still means pain?
I'm going
Can
to say
you?
no to that. That's an easy no for me, but with a very, very big and crucial caveat. Forgiveness is not happiness, but forgiveness is necessary to achieve happiness. I don't know that you can be truly happy with your life if you haven't worked on forgiving people and yourself for the things
Yes,
that
you've
are
also
wrong.
mentioned yourself because you make mistakes and you continue to condemn yourself for it.
Yeah.
You can't move past that.
Yeah, which real quick definitional thing that I think is super important here too. Let's talk about the difference between guilt and shame. Like I think that they're directional. I think guilt is there's something inside of you that wants to be bigger and you recognize where you've fallen short. And so you try to recognize what you've done wrong and then overcome that. And shame is people outside you saying you need to get back in your box. And so delineating between the two is so crucial to figuring out what to forgive yourself for and what to ignore from other people. As my little soapbox. Sorry.
Yeah, I've always understood guilt as coming from inside and shame coming from the outside. Both very painful at
Hmm.
times. Um, have you ever actually experienced, Ryan, where somebody um, experiences, you think, more guilt or shame than meets their situation,
Hmm.
and should they forgive themselves?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And like you say, that is so the situation I see it most often is when someone's got a substance abuse problem and they've gotten clean for a certain amount of time and then there's a relapse. They are so hard on themselves for that. And if they don't figure out how to recognize and understand that sometimes, relapse is part of recovery, that if they one slip up, if they don't figure out how to get past that pretty quickly, it spirals and they're in a worse position than when the case started,
Oh, I see.
because
Yeah.
they
The
just
guilt and shame will trudge them down. Do they
right.
come to?
And so
Are they in front of you because they were caught with possession or something? They were caught
no,
high or
no, a lot
something.
of because that's a criminal matter, but a lot of times they're in front of me because their addiction has gotten to a point where they can't safely care for their kids. Their kids are suffering because their addiction has progressed to a point where everything else gets ignored, including their kids. And so we work really hard to try and, like, okay, you need to go through treatment. You need to have a substance abuse evaluation. Or substance use disorder evaluation, whatever they're calling it at the time, and then what level of treatment do they need, and then we track like, okay, you're testing initially 8 to 10 times per month on a random basis, and then we'll taper those down. But if there's a missed test or a dilute or an altered test, those are considered to be positive, and so then we need to have some accountability there. And the ones who white knuckle it for a while and don't really do anything but white knuckle it, when they have the relapse, it's all about, well, what's the point in even trying? I'm right
Hmm.
back to the beginning. What's the point of even continuing with this? And they spiral. The ones who have figured out, like, okay, look, this is something that happened. It's not defining me. Here's my plan, here's my response. That's part of recovery, is those relapse prevention plans and relapse response plans. um but if it's just they're white knuckling it and have a slip up, then they're way harder on themselves, and
Hmm.
it's worse. It just
Well, that
and
goes
it's
to the
funny
definition
because
of forgiveness, of acknowledging and knowing.
yeah, and
We
and we see, like, the people who work in this area, and I'm sure you guys see it too. You see little changes, and you're like, okay, stop. Let's cut it off right here. Let's stop right here. get back on track, reassess. And the ones who ignore those little changes, like we all see it and we're waving at them like, danger, the bridge is out up ahead. And they just, if they don't listen, it just turns into an even worse situation. And so that's where I see that, that situation coming
We
into
talked
play.
recently about dogma and rigidity in thinking, and how seeing nuances in life is difficult. It takes effort. And you see, when open-mindedness is the opposite of dogmatic. And if you're open-minded, willing to accept things, that means things change in your brain more frequently, and you have to accept a lot of different things all the time. All this to say, it sounds a lot like self-forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a list of rules like decisional forgiveness, and you say, I will forgive myself if I do these things, that becomes more rigid. And emotional forgiveness might be more like,
Pete, that's some excellent synthesis.
thank you. I knew it was coming. Ryan, you don't know this, but he works it in every single episode. That S word.
The synthesis word. It's a useful word. It's so useful.
Oh, man. I think it's synthetic.
Anyway, it feels authentic to me. But I think
the
we're
point
kind of
is, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Accepting nuances of life and seeing the different shades of color instead of just having the definite, discrete spectrum colors. If you see all the hues, then it is a much fuller life. But man, it is so much harder. So much harder. If you've ever seen the wall of paint at the Home Depot and trying to decide between cow's milk and eggshell, that kind of thing in life. And so here you are trying to forgive yourself, and you say, yes, I relapsed and it was bad. That means that I am this type of person again. Well, no, you were clean for 2 months. Like that's a huge nuance in your life that you might refuse to accept. Yeah. And it's a huge part of forgiveness is being open.
I'm super mindful of your time, Ryan. I don't want to take more than we're allowed to. And I have, I guess, maybe one final area of question, and that is around people who perhaps have a hard time accessing forgiveness. We've talked a lot about decisional forgiveness, and when people can't apply the decisional forgiveness to themselves, they can't access the emotional forgiveness. I'm curious for you, when you see people in your courtroom and you're doling out justice, which is literally your job, and do you ever find it hard when people aren't showing a capacity for emotional forgiveness or decisional forgiveness for themselves? Is that something you're even aware of in the process? And if so, how do you insert justice to somebody who cannot accept forgiveness?
Yeah, does emotional forgiveness even matter for you in your life?
Does it matter for me? Yes, absolutely. It matters for me on a personal level. On a legal basis, it's a little harder. There's plenty of case law out there here related to termination of parental rights cases where a parent has said, look, I did everything that I was told to do. I checked all of the boxes. But the judge somehow said, yeah, you checked all the boxes, but I'm really not seeing change. You did an anger management class and you are still the angriest person ever. You just haven't, beat the crap out of the guy who cut you off in traffic right now, but we see it simmering below the surface. Or, yeah, I went to therapy, and I'm sure you guys see it too. Look, I got recommended for 12 sessions of therapy, and once they're done with that 12 sessions, you never see them again. And you're going, you need more. You need more. And so in those situations, a judge just said, look, yeah, you did everything you're supposed to, and I'm still terminating your parental rights because all you did was check the boxes. I've seen that situation. I haven't dealt with that yet. I haven't had to, tell somebody, yeah, you did everything you were supposed to on the surface, but below that, I'm not seeing real change. So I haven't had to deal with that quite as much. I always had discussions with my clients when I was practicing saying, look, the number isn't really what matters. It's the quality. Because I've had cases where they haven't done the full amount, the number of sessions that they were recommended to do, but I could go in and say, Judge, here's all the evidence to show that 2 more sessions with this guy isn't going to change anything anymore. They've really done the work that they need to do, and I've had cases close successfully that way. And I've had others where they've just checked the boxes, and
it's a huge thing. You said you kind of hit on it, but it was forgiveness is change. Like I see you do these things, these boxes, but you're still the same type of person, whether you haven't acknowledged the thing that you've done and then forgiven yourself for it, because it's really hard to acknowledge, or somebody has hurt you and you pretend it didn't happen. And so you're still in the same house and you're still doing the same kind of things, just assuming that life's going to go on. Forgiveness is deliberate, and it changes people.
Oh, that's so beautifully said. It really is it. I mean, that's what we ask of people. That's what Ryan is asking people when they come to the court. What has the change been? How are you changing? And Pete and I in session with people is, how have you changed? How are you accepting change? How are you willing to change? But change does seem to be one of the key ingredients of forgiveness.
I guess I need to add the legal disclaimer here as well, that nothing that I have said today represents the views or opinions of the Utah State court system. This is part of the reason why this is Ryan talking.
Oh man, I thought we had him.
Darn. Man, he said a few things we could splice together and deliver out of context that would have really messed him up. Darn.
I got to say, man, I'm so grateful you took the time out for this.
Yes,
I
thank
always
you so
enjoy
much.
having smart people on the show. I tell Pete this all the time. I am the least educated person on this show every week, and it brings me so much delight to learn at the feet of geniuses. So
This has been, well, I don't know that I'm there, but this has been so much fun. I have really, really appreciated the opportunity. This has been great. I've really enjoyed this. So thank you both for
who knew Pete
giving
had
me
it in
this
him?
chance.
Yeah, I don't know what it does, but doing this podcast, like for the next week, I think about what we've talked about, and it ekes out in different parts of my life. I find myself behaving differently based on what Taylor and I have talked about that week, and I get to do a little bit of research on different studies that pertain to the topic. And we get to talk to some fantastic people.
Yeah,
so
same.
thank
And I
you
got to
very
say
much.
too, like how grateful I am for I've never, I don't know why I've never put those two together, but justice and forgiveness being attached as opposed to being separate questions is something that I'm going to be chewing on for a very long time, that I think will have immediate clinical benefit to my clients. So I truly thank you for that.
Oh, happy to, like I say, I've been really happy to be a part of this. This has been awesome. I was super excited when I got the message from Pete, and I have such fond memories of his family. Like, they're just fantastic people. And we, like, my companion and I, we still talk about, like, we still get together. My third son, his middle name is Christopher, after Elder Mounts. Elder Mounts' son, he's got a son named Ryan. Like, we still talk all the time. But we talk about Pete's family all the time. I think the world of them. And
I don't know how I feel about my name being hushed in the chambers of the legal system in Utah.
They know what you did, Pete. Pete, as always, love you, man. Truly, what a gift.
Love you too, Taylor.
Ryan, thank you so much, man.
thank you both.
Yeah, see you guys.